Welcome to Sally Fox audiobook Demon Slayer, Mangekyou Sharingan. Chapter 71 to 77, 71, A Bright Red Nichiren Blade. 1,795 words. Deep within the mountain canyon training camp, the oppressive atmosphere that had lingered for days seemed ready to ignite the air itself. The deafening sound of blades colliding rang across the rocky clearing, sparks scattering in all directions. The wind Hashira, Sanemi, stared wide-eyed, gripping his Nichiren blade tightly as violent cyan currents of wind swirled along its edge. The windmill-shaped Demon Slayer mark on his right cheek had fully manifested. With every breath, its color deepened, feeding him a constant surge of explosive power. Wind breathing, 8th form, primary gale slash. Sanemi's figure turned into a raging whirlwind, sweeping across the ground at a speed barely visible to the naked eye, his blade aimed straight for his opponent's throat. Facing this attack, powerful enough to tear through stone, the water Hashira, Ju, showed no intention of retreating. On his usually expressionless face, a deep blue, wave-like Demon Slayer mark had appeared on his left cheek. His gaze was calm as still water, his breathing steady and controlled, as he swung his deep blue Nichiren blade upward. Water breathing, 10th form, constant flux. A massive water dragon surged forth with his strike, spiraling outward as it collided head-on with the cyan wind blades. The shockwave burst outward, sending gravel flying in all directions. The Demon Slayer corps members watching from the sidelines were forced to retreat again and again under the residual force, unable even to open their eyes. The two fighters separated upon impact, sliding back several meters. After regaining their footing, they once again pointed their blades at each other, breathing heavily. Yet the Demon Slayer marks on their faces remained stable, showing no signs of fading despite the intense exertion. Stop! A calm voice cut through the roaring wind and dissipating mist, reaching everyone present. Rin sat atop a large fallen tree, idly tossing a small pebble in his hand. At his command, Sanemi and Ju immediately sheathed their Nichiren blades. The Demon Slayer marks on their faces gradually faded as their breathing slowed, retreating beneath the skin. You can now activate and deactivate them at will without losing control. Rin flicked the pebble away, jumped down from the tree, and swept his gaze across the training ground. The hellish training of the past month had produced remarkable results. Not far away, the stone Hashira, Jyomi, sat cross-legged beneath the pounding waterfall, the stone-like Demon Slayer mark on his arms flickering in and out of view. The flame Hashira, Kaijuro, and the sound Hashira, Tengen, were sparring, flame and sound patterned marks appearing on their foreheads and around their eyes. The serpent Hashira, Abanai, and the mist Hashira, Machiro, trained on plum blossom stakes, their snake and mist-like marks reflecting off one another as they moved. Even the love Hashira, Mitsuri, whose physique was uniquely flexible, could now activate the pink, heart-shaped Demon Slayer mark near her collarbone while wielding her flexible blade. What surprised Rin slightly was Shinobu, standing by the corridor with a basin of water in hand. Under the repeated refinement of yang release chakra, the muscle fibers that had once limited her due to her petite frame had been fundamentally reshaped. While her raw strength still could not match that of the flame or wind Hashira, her speed had reached a frightening level. Just yesterday, while attempting to pierce a specially forged steel plate, she had successfully manifested a purple butterfly-shaped Demon Slayer mark along the side of her neck. Every single one of them had awakened their mark. Without a doubt, this was the most elite demon-slaying force in the 1,000-year history of the Demon Slayer Corps. After a month of reinforcement with Yang release, your bodies have fully adapted to the burden of the Demon Slayer mark. Even if you fight continuously for 3 days and nights with the mark active, as long as your head remains attached, you won't die. Rin stepped into the center of the training ground, gathering all the Hashira before him. Everyone quickly gathered, with the three rising talents, Kamado Tanjiro, Agatsuma Zenitsu, and Hashibara Inosuke also squeezing into the outer circle. The three of them had awakened their Demon Slayer marks a few days earlier and were currently in peak condition. Rindano, do we now have the strength to kill Kibutsuji Musen? Rengoku Kaijuro stepped forward, his voice loud and resolute. Kill Kibutsuji Musen? Rin glanced at him and poured cold water on his enthusiasm without hesitation. At your current level, if you encounter one of the top 3 upper ranks, you might be able to ensure your survival, or even win through numbers. But if you face Kibutsuji Musen directly, the blades in your hands are no different from fire pokers. Everyone's expressions shifted. Why? Sanemi frowned. With the Demon Slayer mark, our speed and strength have increased several times over. No matter how strong Kibutsuji Musen is, are you saying we can't even cut his neck? You can cut it, Rin replied bluntly. But cutting it is meaningless. Rin turned to Tomioka Ju. Lend me your sword. Ju did not hesitate. He immediately drew his Nichiren blade and handed it over with both hands. Rin gripped the hilt, his fingers brushing across the cold steel. The top 3 upper ranks, including Kibutsuji Musen, have already surpassed the limits of ordinary demons. Decapitation with a standard Nichiren blade is no longer fatal to them. The moment your blade passes through his neck, Kibutsuji Musen can regenerate instantly. Killing him through decapitation alone is impossible. Then what are we supposed to do? Yuzui Tingen's expression grew serious. If even decapitation was ineffective, then the accumulated experience of demon slayers over the past 1,000 years would mean nothing. If you want to suppress their rapid regeneration, you need to change something about your blades. Rin tightened his grip on the hilt. In the next instant, the muscles in his arm tensed. A terrifying grip strength, purely physical, without any chakra, clamped down like a press. An astonishing scene unfolded. Before their eyes, the originally deep blue Nichiren blade began to glow with a scorching crimson heat, spreading outward from the hilt. The intense heat distorted the surrounding air. Even from several steps away, everyone could feel the scorching temperature radiating from the blade enough to completely incinerate demon cells. The sword turned red? Tanjiro's eyes widened. This is a bright red Nichiren blade. Rin released his grip, and the crimson glow quickly faded, the blade cooling back to its original deep blue. He casually tossed the sword back to Ju. A Nichiren blade is forged from Tamahagane that has absorbed sunlight. If your grip strength is sufficient, extreme pressure can generate intense heat, transforming the blade into a bright red Nichiren blade. Any demon struck by it will have their wounds burned as if by real sunlight, completely losing their ability to regenerate. But, that kind of grip strength. Ju stared at the blade in his hand. The force Rin had just displayed was beyond human limits. Even with the Demon Slayer mark activated, he couldn't imagine exerting enough pressure to make steel glow red. If one person's strength isn't enough, then use a method. Rin pointed at Sanemi and Ju. You two activate your Demon Slayer marks. Use all your strength and clash your blades. Sanemi and Ju exchanged a glance, immediately understanding. If individual grip strength wasn't enough, then they would rely on the immense pressure and friction created by two blades colliding. Both of them let out low shouts as their Demon Slayer marks surfaced. Gripping their swords with both hands, they swung at each other with full force. A deafening metallic crash rang out. Under the overwhelming pressure, a burst of brilliant sparks erupted at the point of impact. In the next instant, a scorching crimson glow spread rapidly from the collision point, engulfing both blades from end to end. It worked! Kanroji Mitsuri covered her mouth, her eyes filled with excitement. Sanemi stared at the bright red Nichiren blade in his hand, the intense heat radiating from it reflected in his eyes as a trace of exhilaration appeared. With this, Kibutsuji Musen's rapid regeneration would no longer be an insurmountable obstacle. The Demon Slayer mark. The bright red Nichiren blade. Rin stood with his hands in his pockets, watching the group of swordsmen who had finally stepped into the realm of top-tier combat power. There's one last thing. Tsukitoru Sekai. The see-through world or transparent world. Let go of unnecessary killing intent. Focus your awareness to the extreme, and sense your opponent's muscle movements and blood flow. Only when you can close your eyes and perceive their internal structure as clearly as if it were laid bare before you will you be qualified to stand against Kibutsuji Musen. After explaining the final key, Rin turned and walked toward Kochu Shinobu, who was waiting by the corridor. Kochu Shinobu handed him a clean towel. Have you taught them everything? She asked softly, passing him a cup of warm water. I've taught them everything I can. Rin wiped his hands, took a sip of water, and looked up at the sky above the canyon, broken into fragments by the canopy of trees. Now, it's only a matter of when that coward Kibutsuji Musen decides to drag us into the game. At that moment, a Kasugai crow flapped its wings as it rushed in from outside the canyon, landing directly on a wooden frame at the edge of the training ground. Urgent report! Urgent report! The crow's hoarse, anxious cry echoed across the suddenly silent training ground. Message from the master. Multiple hidden strongholds across the country have simultaneously discovered large numbers of mysterious eyeballs conducting surveillance. These eyes all bear the character for. The Kikuchi attempted to eliminate them, but there are too many, it's impossible to destroy them all. Ka! Hearing this, every Hashira instinctively tightened their grip on their Nichiren blades, their gazes turning toward Rin in unison. Kibutsuji Musen's surveillance had finally spread. A little slower than I expected. Rin tossed the towel aside, a cold smile forming at the corner of his lips. He knew this was the final signal. Once Kibutsuji Musen confirmed the exact location of the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, he would undoubtedly activate his Infinity Castle and drag them all inside for a decisive battle. Everyone! Rin turned, his black hair stirring in the mountain wind. Deep within his dark pupils, a scarlet six-pointed pattern faintly rotated. The special training ends here. Go back, prepare your weapons, and write your wills. Eat well. He stepped forward, walking toward the exit of the canyon. Prepare yourselves. We're going to hell to kill demons. _______. Read 12 chapters ahead. Patreon.com/slept01. Chapter 72, Prologue to the Decisive Battle. 1,675 words. The late autumn evening breeze carried a chilling undertone, stirring the withered leaves across the courtyard. 2 days had passed since the Kasugai crow shattered the silence. In those 2 days, the entire Demon Slayer Corps had entered a state of unprecedented high alert. All Hashira and swordsmen above Kino rank had been secretly gathered at the Ubuyoshiki estate and its surrounding core strongholds. Meanwhile, the number of surveillance eyes marked with the character 4 on the outskirts continued to grow, like cold, ever-present gazes fixed upon the area. Everyone understood that Kibutsuji Musen had already locked onto their location. That 1,000-year-old demon king could appear at any moment with his upper ranks, or use some vast spatial technique to swallow them whole. The atmosphere was suffocating, like awaiting a final sentence. And yet, there was still someone who seemed utterly unbothered. In the backyard of the Butterfly Mansion, Rin lounged lazily against a wooden pillar in the corridor, dressed in a loose black yukata. In front of him sat a small stove, a few rice cakes grilling over the fire, with a pot of sake warming beside them. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke, the 3 stubborn troublemakers, were seated cross-legged in the center of the courtyard in a rather strange posture. Their eyes were tightly shut, their breathing so faint it was almost imperceptible, as they attempted to grasp the so-called see-through world under Rin's guidance. Don't frown like that. The see-through world can't be forced. The more you try to think about it deliberately, the more your mind will wander. Rin flipped the rice cakes on the stove and spoke casually. Imagine your consciousness as a pool of still water, so calm that even a pebble falling into it creates no ripple. Listen to the wind, listen to the insects, and then listen to the flow of blood within your own body. How is that even possible to hear? Zenitsu was the first to break, frantically scratching his blonde hair as he rolled around on the ground. My head is full of that 6-eyed demon and the one with the fan. I'm going to die. I'll definitely get eaten in the final battle. Shut up, you useless coward. This great me already heard it. I heard the rumbling in my stomach. The boar god is calling me. Inosuke leapt to his feet, drawing his dual blades and slashing wildly. That's just because you're hungry. Rin cut through his delusion without mercy. He glanced at Tanjiro, who was still holding on. Among the 3, this kid truly had the highest potential. His breathing was already beginning to align faintly with the natural rhythm. Alright, that's enough for today. Rin placed the grilled rice cakes onto a plate and poured himself a cup of sake. Last-minute cramming will only get you this far. Go clean your swords and get some rest early tonight. Yes, Rin-san. Tanjiro opened his eyes. Though he had yet to fully grasp the see-through world, his gaze was unwavering. After sending the three troublemakers away, Rin picked up his cup and took a sip. Clack, clack, clack. The light sound of wooden geta echoed along the corridor. Kocho Shinobu approached, carrying a tray with several bottles of strangely colored concentrated liquids. She was no longer in her usual attire. Instead, she had already changed into the black uniform of the Demon Slayer Corps, with her butterfly-patterned haori draped over it. Even her hair was tied up neatly. She was clearly ready for battle at any moment. Have you finished analyzing the chakra samples? Rin gestured toward the bottles in her hands. Yes. Kocho Shinobu knelt opposite him and carefully arranged the vials. A sharp, almost obsessive gleam shone in her usually calm eyes. I combined the yang release chakra you provided with highly concentrated wisteria poison. The result is astonishing. She picked up a pale purple vial and held it toward the moonlight. Wisteria poison normally destroys demon cells in a one-sided manner. But yang release grants vitality. When the two are combined, I created a compound that forces demon cells to undergo explosive overgrowth in an instant. A faint trace of approval flashed in Rin's eyes. Forcing their cells into uncontrolled proliferation? Exactly. Kocho Shinobu's lips curved into a dangerous smile. As long as this is injected into Musen or the upper ranks, their cells will undergo uncontrolled proliferation under the catalysis of yang release. When the rate of division exceeds the limits their bodies can sustain, boom. She made a small gesture of explosion with her hand. Their prized regenerative ability will instead become the very thing that accelerates their collapse. And to prevent Musen from breaking down the toxin, I also incorporated components from the human transformation drug provided by Lady Tamayo. She set the vial down, her gaze turning icy. Aging, humanization, and cellular collapse. That is the triple hell I've prepared for Kibutsuji Musen. Rin listened to her explanation of what could only be described as a terrifying biochemical weapon and raised an eyebrow slightly. Once this butterfly made up her mind, she was more lethal than the deadliest venom. Well done. Keep it with you. When the decisive battle begins, find the right moment and administer a proper dose. Rin handed her a rice cake from the plate. Just don't force yourself into close combat with the upper ranks. With your abilities, it's better to stay behind me and strike when the opportunity presents itself. Kocho Shinobu accepted the rice cake, taking a small bite before giving a faint snort of dissatisfaction. Stop underestimating me. Even if my strength isn't the highest, I'm the fastest in the entire corps right now. Yes, the insect Hashira is unparalleled. Rin replied casually, though his gaze drifted past the courtyard wall toward the main residence of the Abuyoshiki estate. The lights there were still burning. Ever since recovering his health, Abuyoshiki Kagaya had barely rested these past few days. He was mobilizing every resource the Demon Slayer Corps had accumulated over 1,000 years to prepare the final trap. Not only had he summoned swordsmen from across the country to return and defend, but he had also ordered the placement of specially prepared explosives and wisteria-based toxin smoke bombs beneath the estate and throughout the surrounding forest, enough to level the entire mountain. Rin-san. Kocho Shinobu swallowed her bite and called out softly. Do you think we can really win? Even though their strength had risen drastically after a month of training, the shadow that had ruled the night for 1,000 years still lingered over them. Even she, who was usually so composed and sharp-tongued, could not completely suppress the unease in her heart. Rin did not answer immediately. He set down his sake cup and looked up at the pale crescent moon in the night sky. An autumn breeze passed, lifting the hem of his black yukata. Whether we can win isn't something you think about. It's something you carve out with your own hands. Rin turned his head. His pitch-black eyes held no hesitation, only an absolute confidence that naturally put others at ease. 1,000 years ago, Tsujikuni Yorichi cut him into 1,800 pieces, scaring him into hiding for centuries. Today, I can burn that pathetic nest of his in the Infinity Castle to ashes, body and soul. I'll leave him with nothing. He reached out and casually draped an arm around Kocho Shinobu's shoulders, pulling her into his embrace. With me here, the sky won't fall. Hearing the steady, powerful rhythm of his heartbeat, the lingering unease in Kochu Shinobu's heart finally faded completely. She leaned quietly against his shoulder and closed her eyes. I believe in you. Late at night, everything was silent. In a hidden forest several kilometers from the Abuyoshiki estate. The last surveillance I marked with the character 4 was cut down by a member of the Kikushi. But it was already too late. All the gathered information had already flowed back to that eerie city hidden deep underground, like rivers returning to the sea. Within the Infinity Castle, Kibutsuji Muzan sat upon a luxurious Western-style sofa. He was still dressed in a black kimono, his long hair falling over his shoulders, his pale, handsome face completely expressionless. Yet the air around him warped visibly under the weight of his compressed killing intent. Found you. Muzan's voice echoed through the empty chamber, laced with cruel satisfaction, like a predator finally tearing away its prey's disguise. Abuyoshiki Kagaya, you insect hiding in the shadows. You actually gathered all your forces in one place. Do you think that with that lightning-wielding swordsman backing you, you can stand against me? Muzan rose slowly, a tyrannical gleam flashing within his plum-red slit pupils. How naive. Since you've chosen to gather together, I'll grant your wish. He turned his head toward Mangekyou, who stood upon the raised platform behind him. Mangekyou. I am here. Mangekyou held her biwa and bowed respectfully. Prepare to activate your spatial technique. Lock onto the coordinates of the Abuyoshiki estate. A terrifying smile spread across Muzan's face, his lips curling wide enough to reveal rows of sharp, white fangs. Tonight, I will drag everything there along with that mountain into the Infinity Castle. I will have that arrogant swordsman and those self-righteous Hashira drained of every last drop of blood by endless demons within this maze with no escape. And I will personally capture the demon named Nezuko, devour her, and ascend into a true god. As Muzan's roar echoed, Mangekyou raised the plectrum in her hand and struck the strings of her biwa with force. A piercing note tore through the fabric of space itself. The entire Infinity Castle began to tremble violently. Countless halls and corridors twisted and rearranged within the void, like a colossal beast opening its blood-red maw, ready to devour the world. At that moment, the gears of the final battle began to turn with a thunderous roar. ________. Read 12 chapters ahead. Patreon.com/slept01. Chapter 73, It's Not Me Who Got Trapped. 1,465 words. The tranquility of the Abuyoshiki estate and the butterfly mansion was shattered in an instant by a sudden sound. A single note from a biwa rang out, carrying overwhelming penetrating force. Rin, standing in the corridor of the butterfly mansion, narrowed his eyes slightly. It's here. The moment his words fell, the ground beneath their feet vanished without warning. Japanese sliding doors painted with ukiyo-e patterns appeared out of thin air, opening one after another beneath their feet, above their heads, and throughout the surrounding space. In that instant, the very concept of space was overturned, and gravity lost all meaning. Ah! Shinobu Kocho, who had been carrying medicine, felt the floor disappear beneath her. A powerful sense of weightlessness struck her, and she fell uncontrollably toward the endless wooden abyss below. Before she could even draw the short blade at her waist, a strong arm wrapped around her slender waist, pulling her firmly against a broad chest. Don't panic. Hold on to me, Rin's deep, steady voice sounded beside her ear. In the next moment, a surge of deep purple-red chakra burst from Rin's body. The immense energy rapidly took shape in midair, forming a half-body Susanoo composed of skeletal ribs and arms, shielding Rin and Shinobu within its core. I'm falling into hell. Not far away, Zenitsu Agatsuma flailed wildly in midair, his cries echoing miserably as he tumbled. Tanjiro Kamado tried to steady himself, adjusting his posture mid-fall, while Inosuke Hashibara excitedly swung his dual blades, shouting about slicing all the flying wood to pieces. The giant skeletal hand of the Susanoo shot out, grabbing the three noisy troublemakers like chicks and pulling them into its palm. Quiet down, or I'll drop you, Rin said coldly. Zenitsu immediately clamped his mouth shut, nodding frantically through tears. At the same time, the Hashira at the Abuyoshiki estate were experiencing the same upheaval. Yet thanks to the hellish training of the past month, each of them displayed astonishing reflexes in the face of this sudden crisis. Wind breathing, fourth form, rising dust storm. Sanemi Shinazugawa swung his blade upward midair, the force of the wind propelling him onto a floating wooden staircase. Jyomi Himajima hurled his spiked flail, the chain wrapping tightly around a thick beam, allowing him to swing down and land steadily. Kayajuro Rengoku, Jutomioka, and the others each used their own movement techniques, finding footing within this twisted, inverted, and chaotic space. Everyone looked around, shock filling their eyes. This was an endless underground city. Countless pavilions, corridors, and stairways overlapped in ways that defied all physical laws, bottomless and impossible to reach the end. The Infinity Castle. Kibutsuji Musen's absolute domain. Welcome to my castle, you foolish demon slayers. A cold, arrogant voice echoed through every corner of the Infinity Castle, carried by Neikai's blood demon art. Abuyoshiki Kagaya, did you really think gathering all your forces would allow you to contend with me? How naive. Tonight, this place will become the graveyard of the entire Demon Slayer Corps. I will devour you all, along with that demon named Nezuko. As Kibutsuji Musen's declaration fell, countless sliding doors throughout the Infinity Castle burst open at once. From every direction, thousands of grotesque, foul-smelling lower-ranking demons poured out like a tide, crawling along wooden walls and stairways as they rushed madly toward their prey. A graveyard? You're certainly confident in your shell. Standing atop the Susanu's palm, Rin's pitch-black pupils transformed into the scarlet eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. His voice, infused with immense chakra, directly overwhelmed Musen's broadcast, causing the entire Infinity Castle to tremble. You vermin who've been hiding in the dark for 1,000 years are only capable of tricks like trapping others in a cage. Rin raised his right hand. Azure lightning gathered wildly in his palm, releasing the piercing cry of 1,000 birds. But you've made one mistake. You didn't trap us in here, you trapped yourself in here with monsters. Lightning release, Chidori. Great splitting flash. Boom. From Rin as the center, hundreds of high-pressure lightning bolts as thick as barrels exploded outward, sweeping across the intricate wooden corridors and stairways. The front ranks of demons didn't even have time to scream before they were reduced to charred ash, obliterated by the violent surge of lightning. Blinding arcs of electricity illuminated every dark corner of the Infinity Castle like daylight. At the sight of this, the tension in the Hashira instantly turned into surging battle intent. Lord Rin is right. This is not our graveyard, but the final hunting ground to slay Kibutsuji Musen. Flame Hashira Kayajuro Rengoku roared, the flame-shaped demon slayer mark on his forehead igniting at once. Everyone! Slay every demon! Do not let Lord Rin fight alone. Just what I wanted. I'll tear this broken castle apart. Wind Hashira Sanemi Shinazugawa laughed wildly as he charged into the swarm, his wind blades shredding through demons like a storm of blades. Just as the slaughter was about to begin, the sharp sound of the biwa rang out once more. Neikime plucked the strings of her biwa. She had received a direct order from Master Musen, separate these troublesome Hashira, then use the terrain and the upper ranks to eliminate them one by one. The space of the Infinity Castle twisted and folded violently. Connected stairways snapped apart, and wooden walls flipped in every direction. Flame Hashira Kayajuro Rengoku, Wind Hashira Sanemi Shinazugawa, Water Hashira Jutomioka, and the others all lost their footing as the ground beneath them vanished, forcibly transported to unknown areas within the castle. Spatial blood demon art, ha! Rin looked at the warped surroundings and let out a cold snort. He could feel a powerful spatial force trying to tear him away from Shinobu, Tanjiro, and the others beside him. If it were his former Mangekyou Sharingan, dealing with this large-scale spatial displacement might have been troublesome. But now, with the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan and the foundation of Yin release and Yang release, as long as he resisted, this level of spatial manipulation couldn't move him at all. Tanjiro, take the two of them and follow the scent to regroup with the Hashira. Rin kicked the three of them toward a sliding door that was about to close, while his left hand tightly gripped Shinobu's wrist. As for you, don't even think about taking anyone from me. The pattern in the depths of Rin's eyes spun rapidly as vast chakras surged out, forcibly anchoring a coordinate within the distorted space. A wave of dizziness followed as the surrounding space sealed shut. When his vision cleared again, Rin and Shinobu had landed in a spacious chamber. The temperature here was extremely low, and tiny ice crystals floated through the air. At the center of the room lay a large indoor lotus pond. Nakeim is quite thoughtful, sending me such lovely guests. A smooth, honeyed voice drifted out from the center of the lotus pond. The moment Shinobu Kocho heard it, her pupils shrank sharply. Her blood seemed to run cold, and the hatred buried deep in her bones made her grip on the sword hilt tremble uncontrollably. Seated upon an ice throne in the lotus pond was a young man with long, pale white hair, his head stained as though splashed with fresh blood. He lazily waved a golden iron fan, his rainbow-colored eyes fixed on them with a smile. Upper rank 2, Doma. I recognize that Haori. There was a female swordsman who used flower breathing who wore it before. Her scent, truly nostalgic. Doma tapped his chin lightly with his fan, letting out a theatrical sigh. It's a pity it was already dawn back then. I couldn't eat her. Such a shame. You monster. The moment Shinobu Kocho heard those words, something inside her snapped. The butterfly-shaped demon slayer mark at her neck ignited instantly as she drew her short blade, ready to charge forward without hesitation. A warm, powerful hand pressed firmly onto her shoulder, stopping her in place. Calm down. Rin pulled her behind him, his voice steady, yet carrying an authority that could not be resisted. He lifted his gaze, his dark eyes locking coldly onto Doma seated upon the ice throne. I already said it before. The death of this fan-waving freak will be a gift from me to you. Rin flicked his Kusanagi sword into a reverse grip, purple-black lightning crackling along its blade as the tip angled toward the ground. Didn't you just say it was a pity you couldn't eat your fill? A cold, cruel smile formed at the corner of Rin's lips. Today, I'll treat you to a feast hot enough to burn even your soul. _______. Read 12 chapters ahead. Patreon.com/slept01. Chapter 74, Fear, Born from Pure Instinct. 1220 words. The temperature inside the Infinity Castle was bitterly cold. On the ice throne at the center of the lotus pond, the smile on Doma's face remained unchanged, like a flawless mask. He looked at Shinobu Kocho, who was shielded behind Rin, his rainbow-colored eyes shimmering with curiosity and mockery. What a domineering protector of flowers. Doma lightly rotated his wrist. The golden iron fan unfolded at his fingertips, covering half his face. However, in an enclosed space like this, human lungs are quite fragile. He gave the fan a gentle wave. Blood demon art, lotus leaf ice. Fine, dust-like ice crystals spread through the chamber with the motion of the fan, drifting like a hazy morning mist. They were beautiful, yet lethal. Inhaling even the slightest amount would instantly freeze and tear apart human lungs. Shinobu instinctively held her breath, preparing to cover her mouth and nose with her Haori. Rin, standing in front of her, didn't even spare the approaching ice mist a glance. He simply drew in a breath, his chest expanding slightly. Fire release, great fireball technique. Blazing crimson flames burst from his mouth. The massive fireball, several meters wide and carrying searing heat, slammed directly into the drifting ice mist. A sharp burst of steam filled the air. The ice crystals, capable of freezing lungs in an instant, were vaporized the moment they touched the flames. The temperature in the chamber surged, and even the crystal-clear lotus pond began to melt and drip. The smile on Doma's face faltered slightly. He lowered his fan, staring at the completely unharmed pair as his expression grew more serious. I'm not using a Nichiren blade, yet able to spit fire. No wonder Akazadano suffered at your hands. Doma cast aside his earlier disdain. Holding two golden fans, he brought them together in front of him. Blood demon art, crystalline divine child. The cold air gathered once more. 5 ice dolls, each half the size of a person and identical in appearance to Doma, materialized out of thin air, surrounding Rin. These constructs possessed independent awareness and could even use blood demon arts equal in power to the original. The 5 miniature domes waved their fans in unison. Fierce winds howled as sharp ice spines surged from every direction, sealing off all of Rin's escape routes. Boring tricks. Rin let out a faint sigh. His right hand, resting on the hilt at his waist, suddenly drew the blade. The black blade left its sheath, dark purplish-black lightning patterns flowing across its surface. Rin's figure blurred, leaving only an afterimage where he had stood. In the next instant, 5 crisp shattering sounds rang out across the ice chamber. The 5 ice dolls, just about to unleash their blood demon arts, froze mid-motion. A clean line appeared across each of their necks. The next moment, all 5 heads slid off in unison, their bodies collapsing into glittering fragments of ice. What? Doma's rainbow-colored eyes widened at last. He hadn't even seen the sword being drawn, yet his divine children had already been completely destroyed. Before he could react, that terrifying lightning aura had already reached him. Rin had crossed the lotus pond and now stood atop the ice throne. A black arc of sword light swept upward. Doma felt a sudden chill across his shoulders. His famed reaction speed was utterly useless against that strike. Both of his arms, still gripping the golden fans, were severed cleanly at the shoulders, falling onto the ice along with splashes of blood. My. This is truly. Doma looked down at his empty shoulders, about to rely on an upper rank's regenerative ability to regrow his arms. But nothing happened. No flesh sprouted from the wounds. Instead, a layer of abyssal black flames clung to the severed stumps. The flames burned silently, without heat, yet devoured the demon cells used for regeneration with ruthless precision. No matter how he forced his life force to surge, the black fire remained like an incurable rot, sealing off all possibility of recovery. They won't grow back? Rin held his sword, looking down at Doma seated on the ice throne. For the first time, a trace of panic appeared on Doma's face. In over 100 years of existence, he had never experienced such a sensation. He had always believed himself to be an emotionless observer. Yet at this moment, his body trembled uncontrollably. It was fear, born from pure instinct. He wanted to retreat, to create distance. But the instant he lifted his head, his gaze met a pair of scarlet eyes. Within Rin's pupils, a hexagram intertwined with 3 tomo rotated slowly, like 2 bottomless vortexes that seemed to swallow the soul. Genjutsu, Sharingan. A dull resonance echoed through Doma's mind. The ice chamber, the lotus pond, and Rin before him all shattered in an instant. He found himself suspended upside down from a massive tree, surrounded by a dark crimson void. His body lost all sensation. He couldn't move even a single finger. Within this mental world woven by the Sharingan, time was stretched to infinity. Outside, Doma's body knelt stiffly on the melting ice. The light had faded from his rainbow-colored eyes, leaving them dull and vacant. The black flames on his severed arms had already been withdrawn by Rin, yet he remained frozen in place, like a statue. Only faint, uneven breaths escaped his throat. I've taken away his hands and his ability to resist. His mind is completely sealed. Even if the sky collapsed, he wouldn't be able to move. Rin sheathed the Kusanagi sword, then turned to look at Shinobu Kocho, who had been standing quietly by the lotus pond. He's yours. Shinobu stared at the kneeling, utterly defenseless upper rank too. For this day, she had imagined countless brutal endings. Half a month ago, she had even prepared herself to fill her body with wisteria poison and let herself be devoured, seeking to drag him down with her. But she had never imagined this moment of revenge would arrive so easily, so unreal. She took a slow breath, then stepped forward. Across the shattered ice, she walked toward him, one step at a time. With each step, a memory surfaced in her mind. Her older sister Kene's pale yet gentle smile before her death. Shinobu, leave the Demon Slayer Corps. Live on as an ordinary girl. Her sister's final words echoed softly in her ears. Shinobu stopped in front of Doma. Looking down at the face she despised to her very core, she slowly drew her uniquely shaped short sword. This time, she did not use her usual wisteria poison. Instead, she took out a syringe filled with a pale violet, transparent liquid from the special pouch at her waist. It was her ultimate poison, created using Rin's yang release chakra, combined with highly concentrated wisteria and Tamayo's human transformation serum.
Doma! Shinobu Kocho's voice was calm.
There was no anger in it, only a cold stillness, born from the release of a long-cherished obsession.
Didn't you like to call devouring people salvation?
She gripped the syringe and, without hesitation, plunged it into Doma's carotid artery, pushing the entire contents in.
Take your hypocrisy and repent in hell.
_______.
Read 12 chapters ahead. Patreon.com/slept01.
Chapter 75, a sense of relief she had never known before. 1,159 words. The moment the serum entered his body.
Doma, trapped within the genjutsu, convulsed violently. His rainbow-colored pupils shrank to their limit. He felt it.
A level of pain he had never experienced in his entire existence spread from his neck to every cell in his body in an instant. The immense vitality of yang release and the wisteria toxin triggered a violent reaction.
His cells began to divide and grow uncontrollably.
New flesh burst through his skin.
Bones twisted and pierced outward.
At the same time, the human transformation serum stripped away the very foundation of his power as a demon. His body aged, crumbled, and began to collapse from within.
The
genjutsu weakened under the strain of his body breaking apart.
Doma opened his mouth and let out the first truly agonized scream since becoming a demon. He looked at Shinobu Kocho, who stood before him with a cold, steady gaze. Her face gradually overlapped with the memory of the flower-breathing swordswoman from years ago.
This is what death feels like. Half of his face began to melt away like wax, exposing stark white bone beneath. The instinct to survive, the fear of nothingness, finally filled every corner of his hollow soul in these final moments. Amid his shrill, desperate cries,
Doma's body collapsed completely, dissolving into a pool of foul blackish-red fluid before rapidly drying into a pile of fine ash.
Thus, Upper Rank 2, who had reigned for over a century, fell. The chill within the ice chamber gradually faded along with his death.
The syringe slipped from Shinobu Kocho's hand, striking the ground with a clear sound.
She stared blankly at the pile of ashes. All strength drained from her body as her legs gave out, and she fell forward. Rin caught her steadily, letting her lean against his chest.
It's over.
Rin gently patted her back, his voice low and calm. The hatred and sorrow she had suppressed for years finally broke free in that moment.
Shinobu Kocho buried her face in Rin's chest, her hands clutching his clothes tightly as her shoulders trembled.
She wept silently, her tears quickly soaking through the fabric.
Rin said nothing.
He simply held her, letting her release everything she had carried for so long. In a world plagued by man-eating demons, too many people lived bound by hatred. For her, being able to sever those chains with her own hands was the greatest form of salvation. After some time, her sobbing gradually subsided.
Shinobu lifted her head from his chest.
Her eyes were red and swollen, yet her violet gaze was clearer than ever, filled with a sense of relief she had never known before.
Thank you.
Her voice was slightly hoarse. Rin raised his hand and gently wiped away the tear at the corner of her eye.
You think a simple thank you is enough?
A faint smile curved at his lips.
Once we get out of this place, you'll have to cook for me for the rest of your life to repay me. Shinobu let out a tearful laugh and shot him an annoyed look. Don't push your luck. Rumble. Just as they spoke, the entire ice chamber began to shake violently.
The wooden floor beneath them creaked under the strain, while the surrounding walls twisted and flipped. With the death of Upper Rank 2, Kibutsuji Musen had clearly sensed the disturbance. Neikim's spatial blood demon art activated once again, attempting to relocate them to another distant part of the castle.
Rin's expression turned cold. Enough of this hide and seek.
He wrapped an arm around Shinobu's waist, his other hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Since you like hiding in this shell so much, I'll just tear it apart.
Let's see where you can run then. The collapse of the ice chamber was only the beginning. With the suppression of upper rank 2 gone, the spatial structure of this area spiraled out of control under Mangekyou's manipulation. The ice beneath their feet and the wooden floorboards shattered violently, while the ceiling above crashed down like a massive grinder. All sense of direction up, down, left, right vanished completely. Hundreds of thick wooden walls surged in from every side, attempting to crush the two of them into pulp. Shinobu instinctively tightened her grip on Rin's lapel, her short sword already held horizontally before her chest. Enjoy playing with your little building blocks? Rin let out a cold sneer, the crimson eternal Mangekyou Sharingan in his eyes spinning rapidly. Let's see whether your blocks are tougher, or my blade is sharper. Boom! An immense surge of deep purple chakra erupted from his body without restraint. This was no longer the skeletal manifestation from before. The chakra rapidly formed thick bones, intertwined meridians, and fully developed muscles, before finally encasing itself in a heavy, Tengu-like black armor. In the span of a single breath, a colossal purple warrior, hundreds of meters tall with wings spread wide, forcefully manifested within the confined space of the Infinity Castle. Perfect Susanoo. The wooden walls and stairways that tried to close in were instantly pulverized into splinters the moment they came into contact with this massive form. The entire Infinity Castle, this supposedly infinite underground domain, groaned under the unbearable strain. Shinobu Kocho felt her vision blur as the sensation of weightlessness disappeared. When she regained her awareness, she found herself standing beside Rin within a diamond-shaped, translucent purple crystal. This crystal was embedded in the forehead of the towering Susanoo. Looking down from above, the once complex and endless labyrinth now resembled nothing more than an anthill about to be crushed. What is this? Shinobu stared blankly at the divine, purple energy surrounding her, the overwhelming pressure leaving her mind completely blank. My personal ride. Not a bad view, right? Rin crossed his arms, looking down at the constantly shifting wooden structures below as they attempted to reassemble. Mangekyou, was it? No matter how big you make your shell, it won't change the fact that you're nothing but rats. The Susanoo's massive arm slowly rose, its enormous hand clenching in the air. Two massive chakra greatswords, each dozens of meters long, formed in its grasp. Even before they moved, the sheer sharpness of their aura tore visible black distortions into the surrounding space. Open for me. Rin's gaze sharpened. The Susanoo swung both swords. Two crescent-shaped waves of purple sword energy, each stretching for kilometers, crossed through the depths of the Infinity Castle. Wherever they passed, whether it was inverted pavilions defying gravity or massive load-bearing pillars, everything was split cleanly in two. Before absolute power, the spatial blood demon art became nothing more than a joke. Wood splinters, rubble, shattered walls, and ruins were swept aside. The entire Infinity Castle was carved open by the cross-shaped slash, leaving behind two vast, bottomless voids. _______. Read 12 chapters ahead. Patreon.com/slept01. Chapter 76, How does it feel? 1,258 words. Elsewhere within the castle. Sanemi and Ju were in the middle of cutting down a group of lower-ranked demons when the ground beneath them suddenly shook violently. In the next moment, they watched in shock as the endless structure above their heads was flattened by a blinding streak of purple swordlight. The pressure from the slash stirred up a violent gale, scattering the surrounding demons like leaves. What the hell is that? Sanemi cut down another demon, staring toward the distant, faint outline of the towering purple figure, his eyes wide with disbelief. Ju tightened his grip on his Nichiren blade, a trace of understanding flashing through his calm blue eyes. That's Rin Dano's power. At the same time, deep within the core control room of the Infinity Castle, Mangekyou was facing an unprecedented sense of despair. Her single eye, marked with the character 4 was bloodshot. Her hands frantically plucked at the strings of her biwa, her fingernails cracking from the force, blood staining the instrument. I can't stop it. I can't stop it. Her voice trembled, on the verge of breaking. She tried to manipulate the surrounding structures to repair the destroyed sections. She tried to fold space to forcibly transfer that man away.
But the purple chakra was far too vast. So vast that the moment her blood demon art touched it, it collapsed instantly. Each swing of his blade destroyed thousands of rooms, completely surpassing the limits of her ability to rebuild. At that moment, the wooden door beside her was violently thrown open. Kibutsuji Muzan rushed in, his hair disheveled. His pale, handsome face was twisted with unmistakable fear and fury. "What are you doing, Neikime? Why haven't you teleported him away?" Muzan grabbed her by the collar, his plum-colored, slit pupils glaring fiercely. Just moments earlier, the room he had been in was nearly split apart by a stray wave of sword energy. That brush with death dragged him back to the terror he had felt centuries ago when he was cut to pieces by Tsujikuni Yorichi. "Lord Muzan. I can't." Neikime trembled uncontrollably. "That man's power has anchored the space. My blood demon art can't move him at all. The castle's structure is collapsing. Useless." Muzan threw her to the ground. Through a crack in the control room, he stared at the distant, 100-meter-tall purple Tengu like Susanoo. Those crimson eyes seemed to pierce through countless layers of obstacles, locking directly onto his position. He had been targeted. Muzan's heart tightened. He could clearly feel the killing intent within that gaze, firmly fixed on where he and Neikime stood. "Transfer the coordinates. Summon all remaining upper ranks immediately. Hold him off." Muzan roared, his voice laced with hysteria. But it was already too late. Inside the crystal at the core of the Susanoo, the hexagram pattern in Rin's eyes slowed to a halt. Under the inside of the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, the blood demon art's energy pathways hidden within the wooden structures, dense as a spider's web, all converged on a single central node. "Found you." A cold smile formed at the corner of Rin's lips. The towering Susanoo dispersed the twin swords in its hands and raised its left arm. A massive longbow instantly formed from condensed lightning-released chakra. Its right hand drew the bowstring back to the limit. A gigantic arrow of energy, dozens of meters long and wrapped in raging lightning and the black flames of Amaterasu, rapidly condensed along the string. A simplified version of Indra's arrow. Consider it a gift. Twang! The bowstring snapped forward with a deafening blast. The purple-black arrow of thunder and flame shot forward like a meteor, tearing through everything in its path as it blasted toward the deepest core of the Infinity Castle. Its speed was so great that it carved out a shrieking sonic trail through the air. Everything in its path, whether solid rock or layer upon layer of wooden doors, was torn apart by lightning on contact, then reduced to nothing by the black flames of Amaterasu. No! Inside the control room, Muzan watched the expanding light of destruction fill his vision and let out a shrill roar. Without hesitation, he kicked Neikime aside and fled in the opposite direction, his body blurring into an afterimage. The next instant, boom! The thunderflame arrow struck the control center head-on. A deafening explosion shook the entire underground space. Violent lightning and inextinguishable black flames swallowed the area whole. Neikime didn't even have time to scream before she and her biwa were reduced to drifting ash under that overwhelming force. With Neikime's death, the blood demon art that sustained the Infinity Castle's spatial structure collapsed completely. The sound of shattering glass echoed in everyone's ears. The inverted pavilions and suspended corridors, stripped of their supernatural support, were finally subjected to the laws of the real world. The entire Infinity Castle began to collapse. A powerful sense of weightlessness swept over everything once more. But this time, it wasn't a fall into darkness. It was space itself breaking apart. The alternate dimension shattered, and the scenery of the real world replaced the crumbling wooden structures. With one final, muffled thunderous sound, wood splinters and dust scattered into the air. A cold night wind swept past. Rin dismissed the Susanoo and steadied Shinobu as they landed on a patch of open ground covered in wild grass. He lifted his head. Above them stretched a vast, star-filled sky, with a bright crescent moon hanging high. Around them lay rolling mountains and dense forests. They had returned to the real world, arriving in a wilderness dozens of kilometers away from the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. Not just them. With the forced collapse of the Infinity Castle, all the Hashira, ordinary Demon Slayer Corps members, and the hundreds of demons within it were violently expelled, scattered across the wilderness.
We're back on the ground?
Tanjiro pushed himself up, taking in the night air thick with the scent of earth, his face filled with disbelief.
We're really out. That cursed space is gone.
Sanemi Shinazugawa gripped his Nichiren blade, his gaze sharp as he scanned the surroundings.
Less than 100 meters away from Rin, on an open stretch of land.
Several figures radiating terrifying pressure slowly rose amidst the settling dust. Kokushibo stood there, his 6 eyes fixed ahead, a flesh-and-bone katana in his grasp. Beside him was Akaza, his expression twisted with fury, his body covered in tattoo-like patterns.
And behind them,
Kibutsuji Muzan, his clothes disheveled, his face contorted with rage. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Demon Slayer Corps and the progenitor of demons faced each other directly in the real world, with nothing separating them.
To destroy my castle, like this.
Muzan's gaze locked onto the black-haired young man in the distance. His plum-red eyes seemed ready to bleed, his killing intent spreading like a suffocating force. Rin released the hand that had been shielding Shinobu, stepped forward, and casually rested the Kusanagi sword on his shoulder. He looked at the Demon King before him as if he were nothing more than a stray dog, letting out a cold scoff.
How does it feel, now that your shell's been shattered?
Rin's gaze was filled with arrogance. The eternal Mangekyou Sharingan gleamed with a blood-red light in the night.
Next, it's time to settle the debts you've piled up over the past 1,000 years.
_______.
Read 12 chapters ahead. Patreon.com/slept01. Chapter 77, Rin vs. Kokushibo and Akaza. 1,290 words. The night wind howled across the wilderness, sweeping dust and splintered wood into the air.
The ruins of the Infinity Castle sprawled across the plains for several kilometers, resembling a vast graveyard. Thousands of lower-ranked demons and mutated demons, once hidden within that extra-dimensional space, now swarmed through the wreckage like a disturbed hive, crawling and shrieking in dense masses. The heavy stench of blood and decay filled the air.
Kill them.
Tear those demon slayers apart.
Muzan-sama is watching. Devour them. The demons roared greedily and surged outward in a frenzy, attempting to overwhelm the Demon Slayer Corps members who had just landed. Sanemi Shinazugawa clenched his teeth, gripping his Nichiren blade as the windmill-shaped Demon Slayer mark appeared on his right cheek.
Just as he was about to charge straight through the demonic tide toward Muzan and the others, a calm voice came from ahead. "Take the others and clean up the trash on the outskirts." Rin lowered the Kusanagi sword from his shoulder, its tip angled toward the ground. "There are thousands of them scattered across these ruins. I shouldn't need to explain what happens if they reach nearby towns.
Form a perimeter. Don't let a single one escape."
"But..." Kyojuro Rengoku stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the 3 overwhelming presences ahead of Rin. "That's the progenitor of demons, along with the top 2 upper moons.
Rindano, please allow us to fight beside you. Can't you understand simple instructions?"
Rin tilted his head slightly, a trace of cold indifference flashing in his eyes.
"Those 3 are mine. If you interfere, I'll cut you down as well."
His absolute dominance left the Hashira momentarily speechless. Yet, recalling the godlike power Rin had displayed during their training, a quiet trust began to settle in their hearts.
"Understood." Ju Tomioka spoke first.
Turning toward the oncoming swarm, the water-patterned Demon Slayer mark lit up on his cheek. Water-breathing, 3rd form, flowing dance. A surge of water-like slashes roared forward, instantly cutting down the demons at the front.
"Don't let him farm all the aura. Spread out and wipe them out."
Tengen Yuzui drew his dual Nichiren blades, explosions erupting throughout the ruins. Tanjiro, Inosuke, Zenitsu, and the rest of the Hashira did not hesitate. They left their backs to Rin and charged outward in different directions, forming a defensive perimeter against the demonic tide. The center of the battlefield was cleared in an instant. Only Rin remained, standing alone before Kibutsuji Muzan, Kokushibo, and Akaza.
Arrogant.
Muzin stood unmoving, his pale face twisted with fury. His arms had already transformed into dark red, barbed whips, while the flesh on his back writhed, ready to unleash deadly attacks at any moment.
You think driving away those insects means you can face us alone? Kokushibo. Kill him. At Muzin's command, Akaza's eyes flared with fanatic intensity.
In his mind, it had only been the sunrise that had interrupted his previous battle.
Now, reunited under the cover of night, he intended to crush this lightning-wielding swordsman in the most brutal way possible. Destructive death, compass needle. A snowflake-patterned array spread beneath his feet. Akaza's body blurred into an afterimage, closing the distance in an instant. Destructive death, disorder. His fists erupted like a storm, each strike carrying compressed shockwaves powerful enough to shatter steel, sealing off every blind spot around Rin. Facing the overwhelming barrage, a faint trace of mockery appeared at the corner of Rin's lips. He simply raised the hilt of the Kusanagi sword, using the sheathed scabbard to block casually in front of him. The impacts rang out in rapid succession, like a relentless drumbeat. To Rin, Akaza's famed speed seemed almost motionless. Every punch, every shift in muscle, every trajectory was intercepted with perfect precision by the scabbard. How is this possible? Akaza's pupils shrank. His compass needle couldn't detect the opponent's battle spirit at all. Even worse, when his full force strikes collided with that seemingly ordinary scabbard, his knuckles throbbed with pain. With this little strength, you can't even scratch an itch. Rin flicked his wrist. The scabbard slid along Akaza's arm before crashing down. The immense force shattered Akaza's balance. Rin followed with a knee, driving it brutally into Akaza's chest. The sharp sound of a fractured sternum echoed. Akaza spat out a mouthful of blood as his body was sent flying, crashing into the ground and carving out a deep crater. Moon breathing, first form, dark moon, evening palace. At that moment, a low, hoarse voice sounded from Rin's left. Kokushibo had moved. His grotesque flesh and blood katana slipped free in silence, unleashing a razor-sharp crescent slash across the ground. Around it, countless smaller crescent blades swirled in chaotic, unpredictable patterns. Their trajectories were impossible to read. Even the slightest contact would tear flesh apart. Using a sword? Then you've chosen the wrong opponent. Zheng. The Kusanagi sword was unsheathed. Purple-blue lightning chakra surged along the pitch-black blade, and the piercing cry of 1,000 birds rang through the night. With a twist of his wrist, Rin unleashed a dazzling net of lightning. Instead of retreating, he advanced, cutting straight through the incoming crescent slash. Lightning and moon blades collided violently. The crescent blades of Kokushibo's blood demon art were shattered on contact, breaking apart like rotten wood against the dense lightning chakra. The residual force of the lightning surged forward, traveling along the Kusanagi sword and slamming into Kokushibo's flesh blade. Sparks exploded in all directions. Kokushibo's 6 eyes widened at once. At the moment their blades met, he felt an overwhelming force. In the next instant, a violent current surged through the blade and into his arms. Ugh! Kokushibo let out a low groan as his arm muscles stiffened under the paralysis of the lightning. His normally composed mind wavered in shock. With a quick step, he retreated over a dozen meters, dispersing the lingering force. Who are you? Kokushibo stared at his slightly trembling hands. For hundreds of years, aside from his younger brother Tsujikuni Yorichi, no one had ever forced him into a disadvantage in a direct clash of swordsmanship. As for who I am, trash like you, who can't stand the light, don't have the right to know. Rin flicked away the lingering arcs of lightning from the Kusanagi sword and raised his gaze toward Kibutsuji Muzin, who had been lingering at the rear. By now, Muzin's expression had turned utterly grim. He had originally believed that with Kokushibo and Akaza working together, they could at least force this young man to reveal his true power. He never expected that in a single exchange, upper rank 1 and upper rank 3 would be repelled so easily, like children. Worse still, that life-consuming demon slayer mark had yet to appear on Rin's body. Useless trash. Muzin could no longer suppress the fear and killing intent rising within him. The flesh on his back suddenly split open, and 9 dark red, barbed tendrils lashed out at Rin's vital points at terrifying,
supersonic speed. Black blood brambles. These whips carried Muzin's deadly blood toxin, and their speed was so fast that even a Hashira would struggle to perceive them. But Rin saw everything clearly. Not only the whips themselves, but even the subtle distortions in the air they created were captured in his vision. Within his dark pupils, the hexagram pattern of the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan locked into place. The power of his right eye focused. Amaterasu. 9 masses of pitch-black flames ignited out of thin air along the 9 incoming whips. What is this? Muzin's pupils shrank. He immediately activated rapid regeneration, attempting to sever the burning sections. ________. Read 12 chapters ahead. Patreon.com/slept01. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Sally Fox Audiobook.